Welcome to Join the City True Stories Edition. I'm Lindsay Salyards, and you're about to see what God is doing in our city. Coming up, we talk to a few people about the impact of the UPMC Pastoral Care Ministry.
But be present to them. Don't try to fix them, but listen. Listening is very important.
They do have a tendency to open up, and and even tears come to their eyes.
And he shows up out of nowhere and he meets me in the ER in the trauma room where Justin's lying screaming.
All that and more coming up now on Join the City True Stories.
God is on the move, hallelujah. God is on the move in many mighty ways. God is on the move, hallelujah. God is on the move today.
UPMC is a well-known entity in this region because of the many medical services they provide. One area that is significant, but perhaps not as known as their other services, is the Pastoral Care Ministry of UPMC. Suzanne Schaefer talks with the director and several volunteers about this ministry that spiritually impacts the lives of many in our community.
Good morning, Tony.
Good morning.
Tell us what you do here at the hospital.
I'm the director of Pastoral Care. My responsibility here at the hospital is to oversee spiritual care for all of our patients, their families, the staff, how that fleshes out here through our staff chaplains, through our volunteer programs in pastoral care. We have about almost 50 people involved in pastoral ministry here in various areas of the hospital.
Are they all volunteers?
We have about 10 paid staff, not all full-time, just between full and part-time folks. And then we have about 40 volunteers in three different programs in pastoral care.
When they're here, is that all day long? Are they on call? How does that work?
Our staff chaplains, we respond to all of the emergencies, every patient death, when people are in the process of dying, to provide support to patients and families, to all of the trauma codes, all the code blues, cardiac arrests, stroke codes. We're a regional hub for trauma and stroke, rapid responses, emergency catheterizations. So we get called out probably 16 or 17 times a day. And so there's always a staff chaplain in the building 24/7. And then part of our responsibility for the staff chaplains then is to minister in the ICUs and some of the other areas of the hospital that takes a little more training. And then we have our volunteer programs. We have a group which we call our spiritual care partners. And those folks minister to people on our med-surg floors, a couple of our selected medical surgical floors, providing pastoral ministry, which includes compassionate presence, a listening ear, and prayer. And then we have another group which we call our prayer partners. Our prayer partners minister to people in our outpatient areas. That would be like our outpatient cancer center, the Hillman Cancer Center, that's just right across the parking lot here. We have 2 outpatient surgery areas, one in the facility and then one across the street. Our outpatient wound clinic, radiation oncology. So we have about 6 areas that our prayer partners minister to folks.
I didn't realize, I'm sure most people didn't realize that there was all that involved in hospital chaplaincy. That's interesting and exciting.
Yeah. One thing that I think is really important is that the governing body, and most people don't know this, we live in a fairly secular society. The governing body that governs hospitals is called the Joint Commission on the Accreditation of Healthcare Organizations. They come through every 3 years and accredit the hospital. If we're not accredited, they could, shut us down. But the Joint Commission is made up of the American Medical Association, the American Nursing Association, and several other bodies. So it's the Joint Commission. They came together about 10 years ago, and they come and assess the hospital. Because of the influence of the American Medical Association, they actually require in all hospitals that it is a standard that they measure that spiritual care in a hospital setting is a patient right. So every hospital has to respond to that. Fortunately, here at UPMC Altoona, the board and the administration very much supports pastoral care. So we're able to have an adequate staff to respond to all those emergencies that I mentioned earlier. And also they very much bless, our volunteers, and and so we go pretty deep here and pretty far. And that whole point that the American Medical Association or the Joint Commission, their point was that when the body and the mind and the spirit are all moving in the same direction, people heal quicker. There's empirical evidence that proves that. And also, if somebody is terminal or at the end of life, their faith tradition or their belief in God or wherever they were coming from spiritually helps them in the coping process. It helps them prepare and helps them and their families through that final end phase of life. So I feel very blessed here, particularly at UPMC Altoona, that we have like the full support of our administration and the board, which enables us to let the Holy Spirit just move and go deep here. And so I'm very blessed. I'm very privileged to be the leader of our group here.
And with the blessing also comes pain that you not. It hits you in a different way.
Oh, yeah.
You see a lot. You see a lot of families that are hurting. How do you personally deal with that? How do you keep your joy?
Very good. Prayer and just keeping a balance. In fact, one of our chaplains, Mike, and I were talking this morning. He's relatively new, and we were having that conversation this morning, to speak to that. You really have to be balanced. You have to really be prayed up, and it could be very depressive at the level of the flesh if you're not balanced. If your prayer life isn't going well. I have a son that plays high school sports, so that's a nice positive uplifting sort of joyful thing. And I ride bicycles, so there you go. So I enjoy that. But even in the very emotionally draining, it is very emotionally draining. But I find peace in that, knowing that I've been able to help somebody. So it's kind of a bittersweet thing, and it's like I never leave the hospital thinking that I haven't made an impact on someone. I don't ever leave unfulfilled, mostly drained, but in a very good way.
From your experience, what are some things that we can do to help loved ones during difficult times?
If they're hospitalized or at home, pray for them, but be present to them. Don't try to fix them, but listen. Listening is a very important part of pastoral ministry. Often you can't fix them, but it's just a walking with them during their crisis or their difficult time. It's kind of like Simon helping Jesus carry the cross. He wasn't gonna prevent, the crucifixion not happening, but Jesus was probably very comforted by just knowing that someone cared and that someone walked with him for just a short period of time. So I would encourage, be present. If someone needs rest, and know when to be intuitive, when to step out and give them time to rest and be at peace. But I think that just people knowing that that someone cares, whether it's a text or a phone call, but presence. Even if it's a 5 minutes, someone stepped in when they're vulnerable, that they're just reaching for support and for love and support.
And outside of the typical day-to-day stuff, are there any examples of ways you've been able to minister to others based on your experiences?
Oh yes, it's made me a much better listener, and hopefully I do a better job at home and with people in general. And part of the the training for chaplaincy and training for our volunteers, which you'll meet some of those folks here in a few moments. A lot about reflective listening and to help people. A good counselor is not someone that gives a lot of advice, but they help you come to your own epiphany, and then it really does stick then.
Have anybody ever refused to talk?
Oh yeah, that happens, and I don't get disappointed about that. They could be a very deeply religious person, but maybe at that particular moment they just need quiet or a time to process something themselves. So it's just being very gracious and offering that opportunity and then kind of giving them, their own space.
And you hear a lot of people being busy, and I don't have time for that. How much time is involved in volunteering as a
Okay.
chaplain?
We ask if you're in one of our programs that you would participate 4 hours a week, which really isn't that bad. And the beauty of being in a hospital environment is we're open 24/7. So we can, usually first or second shift, weekends first or second shift. So we're pretty flexible, and the need is great. So, we can accommodate just about anybody's schedule.
Tony's kindness and compassion is what makes him a great leader in the pastoral care ministry. He asked a few volunteer chaplains to share their experiences. I see you're both wearing cross necklaces. Is that a requirement for volunteers?
No,
Just do
we,
it?
we do it so we're identified. When we walk into a room, they know that we're with the Lord.
And yours is interesting. Where did that come from?
This is a gift. It's from Jerusalem. It is the wood of an olive tree grown in Jerusalem. And it's also known as a worry cross because you hold it like this.
Mine is actually from the hospital gift shop down here. I'm a newbie. I'm the new kid on the block. And I was told that we needed to have some symbol, and all my crosses were small, and all the chaplains had these big crosses, so I got fixed up downstairs.
You are a newbie. How long have you been doing this, Kathy?
Since September of 2017, so just a few months here, about 4 months, 5 months.
And how long have you been in the program?
Well, in the program, the good Lord touched me 5 years ago. This program, that's about 4. I've been into it. And if he would have said to me that I'd be doing what I'm doing today 5 years ago, I'd say, you're crazy. It isn't even on the horizon.
What made you decide to do this?
It just happened. As a matter of fact,
He does that too.
yeah, very honestly, I spent a week in Crisio, which is a religious retreat, and my life hasn't been the same.
When you do take time to separate and go into a place like that, or a time of fasting, and you can
Yeah.
really turn off the world, you hear more clearly from him, and he will always open doors and tell you what he wants you to do next.
Yeah.
And Kathy, what made you decide to do this?
Well, I'm a recent retiree, and I've always been involved in ministry and outreaches. I do a lot of work with women addicts, and I saw the opportunity and heard about it through friends from church that are prayer partners here, and how rewarding it was for them. And I love to pray and really believe in the power of prayer, and I thought this is something I think I want to do. So I inquired and signed up for the class, and I haven't regretted it. It's been a wonderful experience.
And how do you bring hope to hopeless moments that you're part of?
A lot of times it's just, again, it's being present with those patients. It's amazing that how the training here prepares you for inpatient visits. And the neat thing is, you never know what's behind that door. You've just got to walk through that door, know that the Lord's with you when you go, and then just use that training.
When I get ready to walk into a room, I just pray to the Holy Spirit, because honestly, when I get done listening to that patient and we have a conversation, it wasn't me talking. And Some people are extremely interested and ready. Some aren't. But I know from the work that I've done that we have more positive than negative. And it's just holding a person's hand and saying, you know, I'm here for you.
Have either of you found that you are sometimes the only person that's there for the patient?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been times like that, and it's almost like they can't open up to their own family, but yet knowing that, you know, again, when they see the cross, the spiritual connection right there, they do have a tendency to open up, and you know, and even tears come to their eyes. It's like something's been bothering them for so long, and we've given them that opportunity to express what it was, and then to pray about it with them.
I can just tell from listening to you both that it's been more of a blessing probably to you than to the people you're ministering to, and that's how, you know, God works. When we give out, He always fills back up. Have you found that to be true?
Very much so. You know, well, just like today. Today's my day off. But I'm in the hospital. And it gives me a reason to be alive. You know? And they are the food, so to speak. And, you know, just amazing. You can come in here really tired and walk out of here after 4 or 5 hours. You're ready to take on the world because you know you've done something. When I was in practice, many times I would hear people say, oh, I've got 42 days, you know, 3 hours and 10 minutes until I retire. And I'd ask, well, what are you going to do? Nothing. And usually, in a couple of years, they were dead. On the other hand, people, oh, I'm doing this, I'm going to do that. They're still around, you know? And that means a lot because you have a reason to be alive. And you know, the best thing about this, and all the time that I've worked, I've never been paid as much as I'm getting paid now. Unbelievable. I'm not talking dollars.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
Can you tell us what a day in the life of a chaplain looks like from the time you get here until you leave? What exactly do you do?
Sure. When we first get here, first of all, we get free parking. Just want to say that because some people think that, you know, yeah, it's very important because, you know, if you're going to volunteer, it's nice to know how the hospital feels about you. And they consider us as staff. So the staff get a badge, we park for free, we come in, we sign in, and once in Pastoral Care office, we get an assignment and find out what floor we're going to be working for that day, or floors sometimes. And the priorities. And the hospital is so good about getting people a pastoral visit within 24 hours of them being admitted. Basically, we ask if we can sit down and visit with them for a few minutes, and then again, get them to talk about what's on their mind and how can we pray for them. And I really don't get many people that refuse that prayer because, again, they're at that time where they really appreciate it. It's a good thing. So I go home happy.
You pretty much answered all the questions except one.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We also get free lunch.
There you go. I was saving that for you.
Free food and free parking.
Free parking.
What more do you want?
Good for everybody.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're absolutely right. It's just unbelievable. The rewards we get, you know. And, you know, it's amazing. Sometimes you'll go into a room and you walk in there and say, there's no way this person is going to talk to me. And I have found if you go in, introduce yourself, how are you doing, and then close your mouth and open your ears, they will tell you things that they will not tell their family. And we just sit there and listen, you know. How do you feel about that? And off they go. And that's what we're here for.
And I hear a lot of, from our class, we had some, even pastors in our class, saying about just volunteering like this has really helped them. in their own ministry, to be that listening ear. The training has just been phenomenal. It really is. It's very helpful. I'm used to doing Bible studies, so I'm used to being the talker, and I share the information, and it's just, okay, now we're turning the tables. Now you're the listener. Yeah, so it's very good.
After spending time at the hospital with Ron and Kathy, we had the privilege to chat with Carl and Martha Miner. Here's their story of how the Pastoral Care Ministry of UPMC impacted them.
Well, I was in the hospital because I had had a mild stroke originally. And I was impacted with the program because they came in, the pastoral care chaplains came into the room, and they made me feel like they really cared. I mean, they honestly cared. They listened, they were sympathetic to what I was going through physically. And they kind of just made me feel like I was the only person around. And when they prayed, the sincerity of the prayer was awesome. And they didn't just drop it at that. People from the chaplains department came back, like literally every day, just to see how I was doing. And I was so impressed with the way they carried themselves, that I thought very quickly it's something I'd like to get into. It was kind of a place that God began to lead me and direct me into. This is what my ministry is going to become. My pastor is a chaplain there, and he kind of gave me a little bit of, advice as to how the process went on. And I became a prayer partner, and that's a program that UPMC is really building on now. There are so many different places of need there that they're kind of, they're building a program that you just can't beat.
I was answering questions in the atrium part of the hospital because I was waiting for him, and instead of driving the whole way back to Martinsburg, I figured I'd just stay in Altoona. And people would come in, and there was no one at the desk to answer questions. And they see a person, I became that person, and I was answering questions anyway. And I said, well, I may as well become a volunteer and be done with it, and that means I can go to other areas of the hospital where they need help, not just down in the atrium to answer questions.
You don't realize it, how important the pastoral care program is to the patients until, number one, either like me, you experienced it, or you've listened to patients or the staff. They will let you know that your services are invaluable. And it's only because we're presenting the comfort that only our Father can give.
We trust you're enjoying today's True Story program. Joy in the City is paid for by the generous gifts of our viewers, such as yourself. If you're enjoying seeing stories following people and organizations that are impacting our community, please consider a tax-deductible contribution to Transformation Church, indicating Joy in the City in the memo. We greatly appreciate your donations, which allow us to continue developing new stories of how God is moving in our city.
It's nice to hear from people who volunteer and give of themselves to help others in their deepest time of need, but we also wanted to share a story from someone who has received from this ministry. Let's meet Teresa and see how it touched her life.
About I would say, well, it's pretty close to 16 years to the day that we had just moved here. I had no family members here at all. I know very few people. I think I was in town for about 10 days and had a very serious car accident. And my youngest son, who wasn't quite 3 yet, was a trauma. The accident was so severe, it's a miracle that he even survived. And so upon arriving at the hospital with my son as a trauma on a backboard, his head's bleeding, he's screaming, there's nurses, doctors surrounding him from every direction, and I'm like a deer in the headlights. And with injuries of my own, and another child who could be injured as well. And suddenly the first person that I fully encounter, is a Catholic priest. And he shows up out of nowhere and he meets me in the ER, in the trauma room where Justin's lying screaming. And from the very moment of that encounter, he was just that piece of comfort that nobody else, I didn't know anybody. And right away he's like, Mrs. Miller, and he takes me under his wing and he allows me to use the phone and call my mom. And he's just walking me through this process, continually encouraging me, comforting me. It's going to be okay. Do you need to do this? Do you need to do that? And this guy, he's a mystery to me. I don't know who he is. I don't remember his name. And after everything calmed down and we were all okay and everybody's being treated for what we now know as minor injuries, he just kind of disappears. And I've never seen him again. I don't remember his name. But when I think back of that moment in my life, I really needed him. I really did. I really needed him to come up to me right away, and I needed him to walk me through that, and I needed him to pray with me, and I needed him to just be there, because nobody else was there.
In getting to know Tony and the volunteer chaplains, we learned that there's always room for more. If you felt a stirring in your spirit, please contact Tony Conrad at 814-889-4323. He would be happy to help you take the next step towards a fulfilling ministry as a prayer partner and chaplain at UPMC Altoona.
That's all the time we have today. Thank you for watching Joy in the City, True Stories. I want to encourage you to join us every weekday at 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday, we'll enjoy a message from Transformation Church. Then we'll conclude the week with another inspirational story, just as you saw today. So be sure to tune in every weekday, 9 a.m. for Joy in the City. Be encouraged, because God is moving in our city.